Get ready to plunge into the electrifying world of tech news with the Next Tech Check podcast. Hosted by SmartTech Research's Mark Vena and NextCurve's Leonard Lee. This podcast offers bold insights, controversial debates, and monitors the pulse of innovation. It's the only podcast committed to keeping what's next in tech in check.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vena, CEO and Principal Analyst at SmartTech Research, and this is Leonard Lee, Founder and Executive Analyst at NextCurve. Welcome to this Next Tech Check podcast. Today is Friday, August 2nd, 2024. Leonard, it was great seeing you a couple of nights ago in San Diego at the Qualcomm soccer event. A lot of fun there.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know Leonard doesn't like to walk around with a wallet. I had to buy a beer for him because he had no money on him. So no, Leonard's a great guy. It wasn't the wallet trick.
I am so offended. I have to tell you. You know why?
Why?
Because I got carded and you didn't get carded, and I have no idea why.
Because you look like you're 22 and I look like I'm older than 22. It's not a good situation. Not a good situation. I used to get excited when someone didn't card. If someone carded me, that's an East Coast description of what it does when they want your ID. I used to be excited. Oh, you really think I'm 18 or 21? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's super.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to get through this because it looks like we're having technical difficulties of some sort, but let's give it a shot. Hopefully.
Yeah. So
internet will work itself out.
I wanted to put these up to make sure how folks can subscribe to our podcast, and they're always a lot of fun. We always have a lot of interesting conversation. We don't skirt the challenging issues, but please subscribe and like our podcast. But let's talk about that. We're going to only talk about two topics. And I have to tell you, Leonard, I normally don't get shocked a lot when earnings come around, but Intel's recent quarter they just reported yesterday was a major disappointment. They recorded a loss of $1.5 billion. Same period a year ago was they made a profit of $1.5 billion, so it was a swing of $3 billion. And they're laying off 15,000 people, and I know quite a few people who work for Intel in the Bay Area, and that's probably not good news either. The thing that bothers me, and I have a lot of respect for Pat Gelsinger. He's an old-time Intel guy. He left the company for a while. They brought him back. I know he's well-liked by a lot of folks. He's a very bright guy. He did an interview yesterday, and I don't know what publication it was with, but he essentially said he personally, and I guess by extension the Intel management team, that AI caught him off guard. And I got to tell you, we'll dive into a few things that kind of bothers me about what's going on at Intel. But to say that you were caught off guard by AI. I mean, it's kind of like in the department, and I'm probably being unfair when I say this. Is that when Intel missed the smartphone category back in the mid 2000s, you missed it. Now there might have been a defense for that because Apple essentially created that category. And although they were very late to the party, they missed the general SoC movement. They missed a lot of categories. The laptops, I think they suffered from not taking advantage of a lot of the SoC activity that happened. Now, of course, everybody's getting in line with that. But what's your take? I mean, what's your again, I hate to be doom and gloom, but I don't feel good about what's going on at Intel.
Well, there's a lot. I don't think you can just look at this in terms of a single quarter and its results. I mean, this is a culmination of a lot of things. And, I recently posted that this is basically a convergence of many very large unintended consequences, right? And I'm sure maybe even Pat Gelsinger will agree to some of these things, but there are all kinds of different flavors, whether it's from the trade restrictions that have impacted their TAM quite significantly, because China used to be at least a quarter of their. They are probably one of the most exposed, right? And they have been even much more than, let's say, Qualcomm, which has a significant exposure in China.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
And then there's the process technology, their manufacturing. There's the CHIPS Act and how that's turned out, which is increasingly looking like it's not exactly the successful program that everyone was hoping that it would be.
Let me stop you right there, because I think part of the frustration that I have is that, Intel was a powerhouse, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, because they did have foundry capability, unlike a lot of the other players. I mean, and they touted that as an advantage. Hey, not only do we design our chips, but we make them as well. But process tech, process capability in terms of shrinking dies down, you were not on the cadence that you are today, where it's happening much faster than it did 25 years ago. And I got to tell you, I think the whole foundry stuff, and this may be, maybe you'll agree with this, I really think it's become a bit of a boat anchor. I know they got the CHIPS Act that was touted with, hey, we want to invest in America. We want to build chips over here. It's a national security issue. I get all that, but it certainly has not shown results yet.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't even think we have time to get into all the details about it. I've written extensively about this stuff, in my research. I mean, this goes back like 5 years. I've recently posted some of my old research. Actually, it's very, very relevant. Actually, how we've gotten to where we are today, just as an industry as well. But going back to your question about AI, I mean, what do we mean by AI? And if we're talking about generative AI, yeah, sure, it caught them off guard, but they weren't in a position to capitalize on what NVIDIA has capitalized on, right? And they didn't have the integrated stacks. They didn't go and approach company, Elon Musk didn't give them a call, right, to say, hey, can you drop by, the next generation Xeon processor and put it in an appliance fully integrated with the whole software stack. They didn't do that. But it's not like honestly, it's not that Intel didn't know about this stuff, because they've been floating the transformer and generative AI in front of analysts for a better part of 4 years. Okay, so this missed the boat. Maybe they missed the hype, but this, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think they've become a victim of the hype, and it's really, really tragic. Because as we're listening to some of the calls this earnings season, nobody knows where this generative AI stuff is going to go. All we know is there's huge valuations, tons of investment going into the infrastructure, but no one can answer the question, how is this going to be monetized, how it's going to be sustainable? And I really honestly think Intel is a victim of that. And I think all this is going to play out in about 6 months. And, we might look at this quarter quite differently in about a year, right? Because I think Wall Street and others in the industry don't quite understand the nuances of Intel's position. That's not, and I'm any excuses. They've definitely made some less than optimal bets. That's how you get to results like this, right? And reactions like this. But then again, there is a cost to adaptation. I mean, the market is very, very fluid, and it's also super weird, right? Because it's very hype driven at the moment, and I think that's an unfortunate thing, actually.
No, and I get that, and I agree thematically with some of the stuff you're talking about. And Rome wasn't built on.
Come on, man.
No. But here's what I'm going to say, though, and again, I'm not here to pound on Intel, but the thing is that, first of all, when you're a publicly traded company and you're a company that has the pedigree that Intel has, Wall Street is not going to give them 3 or 4 quarters with losses to get their act together. I mean, so that may be unfair. Maybe they have a plan that's really going to pay off in a big way 3 to 5 years from now. But I don't know that if they're going to get a lot of runway here. So that's number one. Number two is, when you missed, to the point of a $3 billion swing from profitability to a negative quarter. And they didn't warn. I don't think they warned a few weeks
ago. They
didn't
warn. Yeah. And I think that was a misstep.
And Wall Street does not. Hey, listen, I ran the PC division at Synaptics. It was a public and they had a big beta. But you know what Wall Street looks for is they like certainty. If you're going to report a loss, tell us about it, 3 months ahead so we can plan accordingly. But when you surprise people, even on the upside, by the way, they're not crazy when you surprise to the upside. But I just think that one of the biggest problems they have, and you and I think have talked about this before privately, is that they have the average employee at Intel is still a 10 to 15 year, 20-year veteran kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's problematic because I have to believe there are voices within Intel, maybe with folks that haven't been there a long time, sending off warning bells. And I just think the execution has been lousy. And I think Gelsinger obviously would say that.
Well, I mean, but he's accountable. He's responsible and accountable for all of it. I mean, that's the thing. And I think, you're right. In terms of providing, basically a warning that this is going to happen would have been actually beneficial for them because they, what they've cited is that they had to accelerate the ramp, and with Lunar Lake, they are external, right? This is TMC. They're using the 3 nanometer process, so it's demand for 5 nanometers, so they couldn't go with more N plus or N plus X nodes to get better economics. So this stuff is going to cost a lot. And they're also competing with Apple in this segment, right? In terms of like the process technology, there's very few companies out there using 3 nanometer at the moment. And so, so that cost is coming in, but then also they could have at least explained that, look, there's some benefit here because we're using leading edge process technology for our next generation AI PC SoCs, right, or processors, and they could have used that opportunity, I think, and that was missed. And they're paying. I mean, obviously they're paying for it, and I think
what you're saying essentially, Wall Street values transparency. If you're going to tell us something bad, be clean about it. Tell us as early as you possibly can. And again, I don't for a second think that Intel was trying to hide stuff. But at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching that's going on right now. And
I mean, no doubt. And I think
the one thing I will say on the positive note is that their PC business is actually performing well.
14 billion, I think, right?
Better than other parts of the business.
Core Ultra.
Well, you and I have talked about this, is that you've got this Copilot Plus phenomenon within Microsoft, within Windows 11. There's been talk about a super cycle. I think the Qualcomm Snapdragon Elite stuff, which performed quite well, we both agree on that because we both have played with a lot of the units out there.
Yeah,
there's a rising tide affects all boats type of thing. But the reality is that the PC business goes up, but it goes down. And that we can debate what that super cycle might be. Maybe it's a mini super cycle. Maybe super is too strong a word to use, but
use super cycle and set super cycle expectations too much.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I was I was caught off guard, like I think a lot of people were today, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform 90 days from now. So, but on a brighter note, let's talk a little bit about hyperscalers and its impact on Gen AI. But let's explain to the audience, for those people who don't know what a hyperscaler is. Let me give you the floor, then we can talk about that and that kind of relationship with Gen AI.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hyperscalers, I mean, just think about it in terms of a IT service provider who basically provides infrastructure service at not just a massive scale, a hyperscale.
Yeah.
It like takes everything to next level multi-tenancy and blah, blah, blah. And so you're looking at, these massive data centers that are serving all the stuff that you hear from AWS and Azure and GCP and all our friends in those wonderful cloud companies. And so and we typically call them hyperscalers, right? And then Meta is actually a hyperscaler, is kind of put in that category. Apple doesn't quite make it because nobody thinks they have data centers, but they do, and they hyperscale a lot of stuff. They're just
if it's typical Apple, they won't characterize it as hyper. They'll come up with a phrase that is very Apple-esque. But you're right. I mean, essentially they do. And by the way, to execute Apple Intelligence, you have to be in the that category. You can't execute Apple.
They would call themselves ultra scaler. Right.
Don't give the Apple marketing people any ideas. But that's
reporting. If it's not, I'm going to be really pissed off. Anyway. So I don't know. Was it a bright note? Hey, look, they all had great results, quite honestly. I mean, Wall Street oftentimes has some, I don't know, they have some odd expectations loaded in and assumptions loaded into their models. So we won't talk about that because we don't talk about valuations. But, I think you and we talk about this question of, and we've done it for months, right? I have to say that we're probably like the first to really, earnestly ask this question and continue to pound on where is the money, and not meaning how many GPUs are you selling to hyperscalers, where's the end market value, and how is that being monetized through end users, right? And I don't think none of them gave a really good answer. And so I don't think that's not good news, but they had great results on foundational cloud services, right? And so I think the Gen AI story is unraveling quite a bit, because even if you look at, what's happening with Microsoft, they've been reporting AI, and analysts have been searching for how big is this business, right? And they're very nebulous about Copilot, and they talk about GitHub Copilot in very fluffy terms, and it's really hard to get an idea of, okay, what is the actual revenue generation return you're getting. And then you look at Azure, and then they do this weird thing where they talk about here's how much Azure grew year on year, and then X number of points for quote unquote AI, which I don't really know what it is, and no analyst seems to ask what that means, right? Or what that phrase means, which it's funny. And then you see all these conflicting interpretations of what that number is of a size of quote unquote Gen AI revenue. So but hey, Azure's gone from 1% to 6% to 7% to 8% of Azure revenue.
Right.
So I mean,
well, I think that the to me, when I hear hyperscaler, it's feeding into this whole notion of democratizing AI, because it's making it more affordable. It's making it more efficient. There are businesses that can take advantage of it that never could because it was too expensive. And as that cost of compute comes down, that cost of deploying that capability, even in a small business that might be able to take care of that capability, that's a good thing. So I obviously, see, the funny thing is, and you and I have talked about this before too. We're at the very tip of Gen AI. I mean, people keep thinking, oh, we're in the 7th or 8th inning. To use a baseball analogy, I'm not even sure we're in the 1st inning. We might even be in warm up still, in terms of just the growth of the overall business. And we know it's going to be large. We're talking about trillions of dollars, and that's just as Gen AI, especially
are set where they're saying the ramp is so fast, the adoption is so fast. You're not going to be sitting in the 1st inning for very long. So any technology, I mean, we're like 18 months into this. Actually, it's longer than that. People just don't know it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
we're much longer in this process than people think. And so, no, we aren't in the first inning. We're probably in the third or fourth, right? Maybe even getting.
The reason why I say that's aggressive is that the good old PC, which is still our venerable device that we use all the time, that still is not an AI class device. That will start to happen now with
sure it
with
is. Well, no, but it is an AI device.
What I'm talking about is the installed base. The installed base of PCs are still not AI based PCs.
No.
Well,
but see, this is the problem with AI PC. You don't need to have an AI PC, an NPU to have an AI PC. You just tap the you have access. It is not a prerequisite to actually start using these applications. So
let it repeat that because your video is
okay. All right. Yeah. So the point I was making is you don't need to have an NPU or any of these things on device to actually use generative AI applications, right? The whole value proposition of things being on device is for emerging security, privacy, and other benefits, latency benefits, right? And they are there. It's just that what's actually nascent is the people figuring out how do we actually use the NPU other than recall, right? Copilot recall, which hasn't been. I don't think it's even out yet. It's still held up in QA. Right. Dealing with some privacy and security gaps. So, but the technology itself in terms of, I mean, look, Qualcomm has been working on this stuff forever, right? In terms of model compression, they've done a tremendous job getting all this stuff on device, right? So, in terms of the adoption rate, I think people are struggling to figure out how do we reliably use this technology and the applications built on it in a way that's valuable.
I grant you that. I would also say at the same time, because I agree with what I have a different conclusion. Yeah. But I agree with what you said. There really isn't yet a Gen AI killer app. I mean, yes, and by the way, well, no, hold on for 1 second. I know people talk about ChatGPT and other applications like it.
Not ChatGPT.
But whatever you're going to say is not mainstream yet. Okay, I don't even know what you're going to tell me, but it's not mainstream yet. Once that killer capability where a mainstream user says, "I gotta have that," whether it's I use it on my smartphone, whether it's on my tablet, whether it's on my PC, my local PC, and take advantage of the latency and privacy advantages. That's when you're going to see liftoff. And from a user standpoint, now there's no question from an infrastructure standpoint, the infrastructure folks and of whatever how you want to characterize them, they're building that super highway to be prepared for that. But I don't think we have that other than the fact that I can use Gen AI to write an article faster or research something much quicker.
Either.
Go ahead, but you tell me, Leonard.
Oh, no. It's something that is probably most, let's say, fit for purpose for the limitations of the technology and the nature of the technology. And we've seen it in the use of avatars and let's call them non-player characters, or just simulations or models of personas, right? And so fans only, they're using that to automate and take the quote unquote entertainer out of the loop, and using a chatbot to entertain clients. and then the entertainer doesn't actually have to be there, but it's a chat. So, guy doesn't know, or the gal doesn't know that they're not actually talking to a person. They fall in love with the character, and then all other kinds of challenges.
I would use another usage model, but go ahead.
Hey, I think that's a killer app.
Oh, it is a killer app. Maybe people don't want to admit that, but it is a killer app. I mean,
why do we not want to admit that?
No, okay.
It is what it is.
Let me give you a PG version or a G-rated version of what you're describing.
We live in an R-rated world. I'm telling you.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just simply saying another usage model might be, you talk about Hollywood and content creation. There will become a point where you will be able to use prompts to create a TV show with oh, absolutely. You'll be able to do stuff that it's going to blow people away, and that but an actual human did not record this. It will be all.
You talk to the folks at, I'm not going to name the ISVs, okay? Just out of, I don't know if it's respect. I'm just not going to name them. But let's put it this way. When they do their demos and I go and I ask a lot of questions, I examine the workflow, I look at how the technology is being used. It's used in an augmented way. It's also typically ancillary. It's not primary. Why? Because if you want to create something that is traditional production quality, right? You just can't get it out of these tools. I'm sorry. You just well, no. And then I think it's also misguided and dangerous to think that it can at some point without any proof. What we can prove now is what it can't do. Anyone can imagine, and this is the problem with hype. We can all imagine that all the problems will be solved. Okay, we can, but they haven't been, and nobody actually has a good answer. And so I don't know if you can make that bet. And this is the problem with generative AI. We have a lot of people out there talking about how this is revolutionary, how they've solved all the limitations and issues of this stuff with this technology with guardrails and RAG and all this stuff, without having a fundamental understanding of how do these applications actually come.
Well, I don't
work reliably and well.
Leonard, we could talk about this forever.
I know.
I think around 80%. We may differ on the 20% of the conversation about this. I just think that
we can disagree 100%. That's okay. This is going to be good stuff for people to think about, and I think it's important for the industry to start. What's wrong about asking hard questions? Why do you have to just believe? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I absolutely. Well,
it's not working out for a lot of. It's not working out for a lot of companies at the moment.
No,
right?
You're absolutely right. But we're going to talk about this more. Let's end it here because we were almost at the 30-minute mark.
Okay.
It's always amusing chatting with you, Leonard. Thanks, and for our viewing and listening audience, thanks for making the next Tech Check podcast part of your daily commute. Please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these convenient on-screen codes to connect with us. You can also follow us on X at the handles below. Thanks again, Leonard, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you have a great weekend too. Let's hope for a better week next week, right?
Yes. Take it easy.